Well, good morning, everyone. For those who are in Southeast Asia, Tuesdays with Gordon. Gordon, welcome back. Hey, look, we had a little snafu because we were talking about microstress. That was an example of microstress that we had here. Where is this
Okay.
guy? He didn't send me the link for us to record.
Oh, well, I was just wondering whether Microstress kind of creeped up whilst you're
Hey,
planning for your Super Bowl party.
I had to sit there and I had to make you feel what we're going to talk about today. And so that was something for you to experience so you could talk about your experience.
How true, how true. Yes, no, so yeah, how are you, Tommy? How's your day been?
Well, yesterday was a Super Bowl party, so I had to preach at the church, another church. So I did that. Then we had our Super Bowl party, and then from
Mm.
that point on, Super Bowl is an annual thing, and it was a very, very good game yesterday. So all of our friends got together, watched the game, but we had a lot of leftovers. And today I was in the office, so it was not bad.
It sounds very fun. Sounds very fun. It's a very great time to get together with loved ones and friends, right?
Gordon, have you ever watched the Super Bowl before?
I'm afraid I never really got into Super Bowl because I was not. I never stayed in the
Yeah.
US for long enough to appreciate Super Bowl.
Got it. So a lot of times it's one of those things where people watch not only the game, but the huge thing is the commercials as well
Mhm.
as all of the commercials and the halftime show.
So I love listening to music, and I understand that from listening to music, like you have the halftime shows, Rihanna or
Yeah.
Beyonce and things like that
Yeah.
appearing.
But it was a little strange with this particular Super Bowl. Usually they have
Oh,
multiple musicians coming in. They just had Rihanna. So that was strange. And I'm not sure if it was because of budget. They wanted to highlight one person. So that was a little strange.
maybe Rihanna was just costly.
I wouldn't be surprised as well too. Yeah.
Right, great.
Yeah, so it
So
wasn't too bad.
okay, yeah, no. So you did cause me a little bit of micro stress.
Okay, speaking of microstress, we're going to talk a little today the hidden toll of microstress, right? So
Mhm.
here's today. I actually didn't realize I had a 8 o'clock meeting scheduled with four people. Two of them are from Indonesia, right? And so
Ah,
it's 8 a.m. Chicago time, about 9 o'clock, now 10 o'clock your time.
that's
And
right.
so I didn't realize that when we scheduled it, that my mother-in-law had to work, so she couldn't take care of my daughters, prep them, get them out of bed, everything like that. So I had to do all that. Usually I am at the office by 7:30, ready to go. So at 8 o'clock, my dad's about to help drive my daughter, but she doesn't need to go to school until 8:40. And then so my daughter gets up. I had to get her breakfast, make sure I brush her teeth, all of that while leading this meeting online for Zoom from 8 to 8:30. It was when everything happened. So there was a point of micro stress for today.
Right, and actually, just to kind of define what micro stress is, the event that you experience was stress, but
Yeah.
the micro stress is the thoughts that keep going on in your
Yes.
mind about who's going to look after my children and who's going to take care of this and that and the other.
Oh, it is learning how to balance and make sure that I pay attention to what's going on and yet get breakfast, get them their teeth brushed, all that stuff. That was the hard part.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't really stress us out in a very big way, but it kind of nags away in your background of your brain,
Yeah.
and I think that's the definition of micro stress.
Yeah. Why this article? Why did you decide to pick this article? Why did and here's how they define it. Micro stresses are small amounts of stress that seems manageable on their own. Think a vague, worrying text from your teen flashing your phone while you're in a meeting, the appearance of a colleague who always wants to vent to you, or having to tell your team that the project you've been grinding out extra hours is no longer a priority. Why this one? And can you share examples of your own micro stress that you had to deal with?
Yeah, so very interestingly, we are not very conscious of these little things being stressful. They kind of just sit in the background, and you do worry about it, but it actually saps your energy and sometimes even hate space,
Yeah.
and you kind of, oh yeah, I need to think about that. or oh yeah, I need to plan for that, and it doesn't really stress you, but it kind of builds up over the
Yeah.
time. And I suspect this is something that contributes towards what I call burnout.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Like, for instance, a little bit with me is I tend to be more introverted, Gordon. And
Mhm.
so when I meet with people or I have to go to different meetings, it's not overly stressful, but it is in the back of my mind.
Yes, and then you're thinking, oh, what if this or what if that, or should I plan for this or should I prepare for that?
Yeah,
That
and I got
these
to
are
drive
little
over
things.
there. I got to do this. I rather be in my office. Why do I have to do this? Man, I
Yeah,
can't wait to tomorrow when I sit there. I have no one to meet with. All these things.
that's right. And it's so interesting because these micro stress kind of build up till the event happens, and then suddenly you feel a little lighter.
Yeah, yeah,
But what if there are stresses that don't have an event to relieve you?
yeah. What, like, for instance, what are some of the micro stresses that you deal with on a daily basis, or that you're aware of that comes to mind when you were working on this article?
When working on this article. So I do have a little micro stress whenever I think about having to prepare for this podcast.
Yeah,
And it kind of sits in the background and it doesn't really rear its head until just before the weekend
yeah.
when I'm going like, hey, I need to think about something to talk about with Tommy. And then that micro stress starts to build up, and I thought it was so descriptive of my situation, even in this such small thing. And then, of course, there are other micro stresses. Like, for example, can you believe this? Even planning a golf game could result in
Yeah.
micro stress.
Oh, yeah. Now, for instance, like playing a golf game, what is the stressful portion? Is it making sure that everyone knows what their details are, or
Well, first is booking the slot, the time slot, and then making sure everyone knows it. And sometimes, for no rhyme or reason, you keep asking yourself, are my flight mates going to appear?
yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, a lot of times, even with this weekend, a lot of times I don't preach very much at a church. Once a month, I am supposed to preach at a church, and when that time comes, I know it's study time. I got
Ah,
prep and all these things, and so a lot of times I'll prep until the week of. Then I say, "Oh man, I got work to memorize it." But it's always in the back of your mind as you're working. You say, "Oh man, okay, I have 2 weeks or I have 3 weeks. I got to work on it. I got to study. I got to outline all of these different things."
yes. And the most probably pernicious thing about micro stress is the fact that you can't, see it and beat it up. It just sits down there
Yeah.
in the background. In fact, it's probably about things that you love to do.
Yes. Now, the article that you wrote is there are three sources of microstress that can arise from all of our lives. Talk to me about those three sources.
Well, so the article that I was reading suggests that the three sources are one, micro stresses that drain our capacity to get things done. And these really have to do with lack of clarity. So, give a few examples. There's a misalignment between collaborators on a project and their roles and priorities. So, that gives you kind of like, oh, wow, am I supposed to do this? Or can I expect him to do this? And stuff like that. Or uncertainty about someone else's reliability. So this could be micro stresses that kind of sap us from and getting things done.
When you were working in the corporate world and running what you were doing at JP Morgan, what was microstresses that drain your capacity to get things done?
So I believe this is probably the reason why we feel less likely to delegate things. So when we start delegating it down to people in our team, it can create micro stresses because we have a certain standard or certain way, and when you delegate, you're gonna wonder, is it gonna get done the way I want to get done, the way I believe the standard should be, and that creates a nagging feeling in the background when you deal with people in the team.
Now, Gordon, you know what my example was for this one? Co-workers who want to talk too much about personal things and not want to work.
Right.
Yes,
I think that
that is
yes.
that is the one that I struggle with the most.
Yes, and I imagine that for you, you'll sap your energy by saying, by thinking about, oh, what's he going to come up with things?
Yes, because I think when I sit there And if I know that a coworker or someone, and back in the days, a lot of times, if I'm stuck working with a coworker and all they want to do is to talk, I realize I just need work done. I don't have time to talk with you. But I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm dreading to go in because I know I'm gonna have to go through the routine of how are you? How was your weekend? And blah blah. Let's get to the point so I can get some work done.
Yeah, actually, there's another aspect of that particular situation, which brings us to our second point, which is microstresses that deplete our emotional reserves. So I imagine that when you're going to go into this meeting and this person's just talk, you are thinking about, okay, I need to have a confrontational conversation with this person to get him straight or her straight.
No, because I'm passive aggressive. I'm sitting there. At what point can I cut off this conversation so they could get the hint that I'm done?
I see. So you're quite okay. So you've seen that conversation to be one where you can confront it and beat it up. so to say.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
So I guess the second type of microstress that depletes our emotional reserves could be something about trust. Can you trust someone who's working on your team, or people becoming very negative in the way they talk that could create a culture of negative or toxic environments?
Yeah. I remember even in terms of lack of trust in your network, right? I still remember back in the days when I built cell towers. I did that for about 10 years, Gordon. And I still remember a couple of us were up for the position of project director overseeing the entire team. And I always thought that I actually had the seniority and all that other stuff, but I didn't realize that different people who wanted that job would then sit there and report on everything that you were doing and taking notes to give to our manager of what I was doing wrong. And I started realizing, wow, I can't believe people do that. And that created stress because you didn't know who you could trust anymore or wanted to trust anymore.
Exactly. And I think this particular micro stress always happens in corporate or organizational politicking.
Yeah,
It's like, can I really say this, or should I do that, or who's watching me?
Yes. Yeah. And then the third one, micro stresses that challenge our identity. Talk to me about that one.
Oh, this was interesting. It is about what usually it's about what we think other people think about us.
Yes.
So if for example, this podcast, I could have a micro stress where if I'm not as relaxed as I am with you, wonder, wow, would I be saying stupid things? Do I be saying the wrong things? Yeah, and these kind of thoughts kind of nag at you, and it'll create micro stress in your life.
Here's a good example also as well too. I think you and I get along very well, but in one of my client relationships, and I tend to avoid this person, that person is so specific about grammar. Every single time you write it, before they even engage, they will nitpick on the grammar. And you're saying, oh my gosh, I just don't want to deal with this.
Yeah. And then it's interesting because you will try and avoid such a person because then you don't have to deal with it, micro stress.
Yes, because look, we're getting to the point. Quick, getting on my case about grammar. What is this?
Yeah, and it attacks your identity, right? I believe I'm good at my English, or I'm good at grammar or spelling, and if this person nitpicks on me, then you know what? Hey, that makes me feel bad about myself, and that creates stress.
So, I mean, what can we do about dealing with microstress in our daily lives? What are some of the things that you advise people to do?
Well, I think the usual things, and then I think we can all end this podcast with a macro thing. But the three things that they pointed out was: one, push back on the micro stress in concrete, practical ways, which we will talk about; and second, be attuned to the micro stresses you are causing others, which is kind of at first surprising to me. And the third was to rise above this micro stress. So let's start with the first: push back on the micro stress in concrete, practical ways. It says you can find small but effective ways to counter microstress that will have an outsized impact in your daily life. These range from learning how to say no to small tasks, to managing technology and how it notifies and interrupts you.
Yeah. Gordon, you know how I deal with this sometimes with that particular idea. I sit there and lump all my meetings or all my interactions during the week to 1 or 2 days. So I just get it over with, enjoy the rest of the week.
Well, actually, I don't know if you noticed this, but I think we just had a notification from one of our computers.
Mine.
Yes, and that can actually create microstress because immediately after that happened, I checked my settings to see if did I turn off the sound notifications?
But at the same time, it wasn't stress. It was a speaker that I've been trying to go after and get for the longest time. Very well-known speaker. He finally texted me back.
I see. So for you, it was a relief of stress, but for
Yes.
me, it created a kind of micro stress because I'm going like, oh, did I interrupt this podcast recording with a bing?
And the hard part, right? Usually, a lot of times you don't get texts at night, but then suddenly, right? All the folks in Indonesia, in Jakarta, in Singapore are all waking up, so everyone's now engaging. That's when I get all of my WhatsApp messages.
Right. So one of the ways to cope with this, with micro stresses, is to kind of remove some of these interruptions that can cause you to think about the micro stress.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What about the other ones? Rise above, be attuned to the micro stress you're causing others. What else would you say about those?
Oh, that's a very interesting one. Apparently, the article suggests that when we create micro stress for others because of our own reactions to the micro stress, for example, snapping at someone, it actually goes back and boomerangs on you, which creates then amplifies the micro stress. So a very good example is it's been a long, tiring day, and so you're going like, and then there's this nagging thought that, I need still to do this household work or that errand, and it's like this, and then here comes your spouse and said, hey, have you done this errand? And then you snap at her. That is actually a micro stress that we can learn to avoid, or reaction to a micro stress that we can learn to avoid, which will then help us to be more encouraging and react and receive a reaction that's more encouraging, which will then reduce the micro stress.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hey, look, I mean, I enjoy doing these things with you. I enjoy these different topics, but micro stress is a real thing. I mean, it depending on your personality, depending on how you process things, depending on how you deal with all these different things, it really, like for instance, even a low stressful thing is when I have to deal with confrontations. I'll do it, but it does eat at me all the time because of my personality.
Yeah. No, so I think that's where we can come to the rising above, which is keep them in kind of perspective. Yeah, it's no big deal. We can just let it slip.
Yeah, understood. Tuesdays with Gordon, the hidden toll of microstress. I know we went a little longer today, Gordon, but there was a lot to talk about. But thank you very much. And again, sorry for the stress that caused you today with giving me the link.
Well, it's a micro stress I need to learn to overcome or cope with.
Tuesdays with Gordon. We'll talk to you soon next week. Okay, Gordon?
Thanks. See you.